personality himself, he takes a strong stand on care of one's mental health. Welcome, Amresh.
Welcome, Avish. Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me out here.
Yeah, we are glad to have you over here, and we are looking forward for this enriching session.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Amresh has an organization called Kaleidoscopic Expressons. It's a wellness blog through which Amresh shares his knowledge and experience with regards to mental health care, life hacks, relationship hacks, and an overall more positive and happier life. You can search Kaleidoscopic Expressions on Instagram and stay connected with Amresh.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Avisha. And I think over to you once again. Let's get started.
Yes, yes. So, as the title of the webinar is Insider Perspective to Suicide, and since you are a mental health professional, how would you describe suicide?
First, before I describe my understanding of the word suicide, I would first say what suicide is not. So, people usually say suicide is the end of one's life. And this is something which you will find in most of the dictionaries also. Like if you open up any English dictionary and you go to the word suicide, you'll see it is the act of giving up or ending one's life. And even most of the mental health professionals also say that this is what it is. Whether you go to medical, whether you go to legal, whether you go to any linguistic, this is what people usually consider it to be. But if you go deeper, it is not the ending of the life which is actually suicide. The ending of the life is nothing but a mere side effect. Maybe not mere because it's a drastic thing, but it is still a side effect. What the person is actually trying to do is end his or her suffering.
Yeah.
So when a person tries to end his or her suffering by any means whatsoever possible, that is what suicide is.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's very nicely explained as to it's one's wish to end that suffering, that pain that one is going through. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the same note, like it might not necessarily be the literal sense of ceasing to exist, our mortal life. It
Yeah.
can also be like someone cutting off from social network altogether, people just destroying their existence. That also is a form of suicide. Any form of self destruction for the purpose of eliminating pain. I think that would be the best way
Yeah.
to describe it.
Describe. All right. And how do you personally view the construct of suicide? What's your personal understanding about
My personal understanding is something which I already said from the theoretical lens, also, and this is something which I have realized myself. Since you mentioned, I have also gone through that phase.
it? Yeah.
So, this is something which I have introspected and reflected upon. And I have noticed that when these thoughts come, these thoughts are not about ending life. These thoughts are, like I said, it's about ending the pain, ending the misery which I'm going through. And more than that, it is a cry for help. Like people usually say, right? Somebody who engages in suicide is trying to get attention. The person is just attention seeking, and all those things are said by the society. Yes, in a
Yeah.
way, society is not wrong because the person is trying to get the attention, but the attention is not towards them. The attention is towards the pain that they are suffering from. And they want people to realize it's like a person saying, hey, look at me, I'm suffering so much, I
Yeah.
need your help.
Yeah. True. True. Yeah. So, as you mentioned that you have gone through this phase and you have come out
Hmm.
of this, and that's what we are talking about today as an insider, your
Hmm.
perspective to suicide. So, would you like to share as to, how your journey has been through that?
Well, Havisha, initially I was pretty confused about the thoughts and ideations that played in my mind, and I was taken aback because I have always been a person who has been extremely positive, and
Yeah.
I have been also at the same time running away from negativity. I had been someone who just used to just shove off anything which is sad, anything angry, anything
Yeah.
negative. And
Okay.
then suddenly, when I noticed that, okay, I'm getting such thoughts which are not pleasant, I was like, okay, are these really my thoughts?
Hmm.
And that confusion, frustration built up the problems in a way. And unfortunately, I did not have a support system.
Okay.
And I also had an ego, like, okay, I am a mental health professional. Why should I seek the help of somebody else?
Hmm.
That thing was also playing in my mind. And due to which I ended up going down the spiral. And over a year, it became such that I locked myself up in my room. I barely met people. I hardly spoke to people. And as I noticed that it was not only my mental health that was deteriorating, but also physically, I was becoming so very weak. I was no longer the same person. My BP had gone down. I could not get up from my bed. It was like I was already dead before dying. So that sort of situation it was. And then thankfully, some of my friends noticed and they helped me out of it. And I can proudly say, without proper technical therapy,
Hmm.
I did manage to overcome.
Okay. All right. I guess it's very brave of you to speak about it today and to share with us and our listeners.
And I think this is something which people should not be ashamed of. And I am still not able to comprehend why it is considered as a stigma. Like, in the
Yeah.
sense that it is not the person's fault that a person is feeling suicidal. It is not the person's fault that they engage in the act of suicide. Again, you might be noticing I am refraining from using the phrase committing suicide because
Yeah.
I don't like using it. It's not common
Yeah.
because when you use the word commit, it's like, okay, it's the only thing I want to do.
Yeah.
Commitment.
Yeah. And it's
But
not even legally allowed to use that term anymore about
yeah.
the suicide commitment. Yeah.
And like I'm saying, suicide is the very last thing a person wants to do.
Yeah.
Like nothing else is working, and they end up taking
Yeah.
that step.
Yeah. True. True. Uh, I think our listeners would also like to know that, you mentioned that you had a sort of an ego conflict with yourself, that you being a mental health professional, why should you seek out help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what other thoughts were running in your mind during that time?
One, like I said, was that the professional versus personal aspect of it.
Conflict.
Like,
Yeah.
I have acquired these skills. I should be able to handle myself. And also in the society, it's there, right? Just as a doctor cannot fall sick, a mental health professional cannot have mental health problems.
Yeah.
So that type of thing is there. And that sort of played around in my mind. And that was the primary thing which was stopping me. And apart from that, it was also like I don't want to be the burden on somebody else. People already have their own set of problems. If I share my own dukh dard ki katha and all those things, they
Hmm.
would be like, okay, please mind your own business.
Yeah.
So that was also something which kind of held me back from opening to people during that time.
Okay. Okay. And have you noticed yourself having some behavioral changes, your routine changes, isolating yourself? तो ये सब के टाइम पे what was it that was going on in your mind that was tilting you towards suicide ideation?
See, it was all a culmination in the sense that life was seeming like a burden to me, and I was
Yeah.
feeling like a burden not to others, but even to myself. And that burden, that bourge was being so much
Yeah.
overpowering that I just wanted to feel free. And due to which, within a span of a year, I think I had made around 20 to 25 attempts.
Okay.
And but thankfully and kind of coincidentally, luckily, whatever you call it, in the process, somehow suddenly that thing thought comes, okay, it's not time yet. It's not time yet. There is so much more to do. So that kind of has been a protective factor, if I may call it.
Okay. So there was still that, hope. There was still that intention to do something more behind your mind. And so, what helped you recognize that intention?
See, I, as a person, am someone who have always put the other in front of me.
Okay.
So the very first thing that comes to mind during that act is, dude, you are being selfish.
Mm,
Like, you are only thinking about ending your own misery. What about those who depend on you, who rely on you, who believe in you?
mm,
I won't say that that is a healthy thought, but that was my personal thought process during that time, and at least it did help.
okay.
But at the same time, I would definitely emphasize that uh, it's not exactly a very healthy thought, because this is something which others also tell to people who are suicidal, that think
True.
about others. Why are you being so very selfish?
True.
So don't push somebody else. If that thought is coming from the person himself or herself, that's a different thing. But
Yeah.
don't make the person feel bad. They are already in a very miserable place to begin with.
Yeah. True. Yeah, when you said that, the first thing that popped up in my mind was that, that brings me to how society views this
Hmm.
construct of suicide. And that's
Hmm.
one of the stigmas, that it's like a stereotype that they tell people having suicide ideation that uh, तू अपनी बारे में सोच रहा है, तू किसी और के बारे में नहीं सोच रहा है.
Yeah, and if you look at the word, if you go to the roots, like
Yeah.
suicide, sui means self. So
Yeah.
everything to do with the self, but it's not to do with the self, it is to do everything with the world outside.
Yeah. True. True. So likewise, as we just brought up one of the stigmas that is attached to this construct, as per
Hmm.
your personal experience, what are other stigmas that are attached with the construct of suicide?
Before answering, I would again say, thankfully, personally, I did not experience any of them on a personal front,
Okay.
but I do have experience of noticing in the lives of others. That is one which I said is the selfish, self-centric kind of thing. And then another stigma is rather the most common stigma. Suicide is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
So that is the biggest stigma associated. And this kind of plays in the mind of the people. Am I weak that I am committing suicide?
Yeah.
And this kind of becomes a double-edged sword, because the person is already feeling weak and they are committing suicide, and they feel that I am so weak that I'm committing suicide, and they just get lost in the trap.
Yeah.
That is one more stigma. Another stigma is, I think I've mentioned in a passing manner, that people who engage in the act of suicide are trying to gather attention.
Attention.
So
Yeah.
that is another stigma attached to it. Then another stigma, which is kind of I have noticed very recently,
Mm-hmm.
is suicide is something which is done either by the extremely rich or extremely poor.
Okay.
So farmers and all committing suicide, and celebrities committing suicide.
Yeah.
So that is what it is seen. But suicide is something which can happen to anybody. Anybody who is on the brink of tolerance
Yeah.
can take up this step. It does not have to be some superstar or nobody. It can be just any ordinary person.
Yeah. True. Yeah. So you mentioned that you noticed these as we talked about behavioral changes, and then how
Hmm.
your friends noticed those changes,
Hmm.
and that's how and this intention of that hope and that intention back of your mind that okay, you need to do something more, and this is not the time yet.
Yeah.
So that's what kept you going all this while when you were going through this phase or that
Hmm.
period of time. What triggered that kind of thought processing
Which thought process particularly?
about like you having suicide ideation or these behavioral changes? What triggered those changes?
Okay. For me, it's difficult to identify a trigger because it has been more of a cumulative thing.
Okay.
Like academics wise, there was a lot of stress, and also on the personal front with friends, romantic wise, and then the family and everything culminatively. And I have also been a person, since I said that I'm a person who puts the other person for in front of me,
Yeah.
that makes me a person who makes me feel less of myself.
Okay.
So, and this is also, I did mention that I felt that I might be a burden. So that was also
Yeah.
another thing, that I don't want to become a burden to anybody else, and so on and so forth. And all those thoughts repeatedly playing around kind of started the journey. That would be the trigger, if I may call it. No particular incident. Like
Incident.
usually, certain people have a traumatic incident which becomes a trigger, and
Yeah.
that pushes them towards it. For me, it was not a traumatic incident as such,
Okay.
just a accumulation of small incidences.
Okay. Okay. All right. And as you mentioned, friends started identifying it, and
Yeah.
they they were there for you, and
Hmm.
they helped you through it. That brings me
Hmm.
to my next question: that how
Hmm.
did the people around you and just the society as a whole, because we also talked about how society views this suicide ideation.
Hmm.
So all of that cumulatively, how did they play a role in the journey of you coming out of that patch?
See, one thing which played a big role was my isolation. So most rest of the society, apart from those few selected friends, had
Mhm.
no clue whatsoever what is going on in my life.
Okay.
And it was in a way a blessing in disguise, in the sense that the people I needed were there for me, and the people who possibly could raise fingers had no clue.
Okay. All right. So, was there any particular, incident or particular, not I wouldn't say incident, but just this way a friend approached or, um, that communication from their side, which really helped you, if you could share.
Yeah. So that one particular friend of mine, I will not take his name.
Yeah.
So what he did was kind of unknowingly played with that thought process of mine of putting the other in front of me. So he managed to uh, press that button, and he, even though is someone who is not so very sensitive about the concept of suicide, and he
Mm.
makes fun of it and all those things, but strangely, that was what I needed during that time. And he's just being there for me, and his senseless positivity of that time and irrational rationalization of me taking a not so wise decision helped me.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So
And
again, out here, I would just emphasize on the fact that when a person is suffering, every time it is not necessary that your support system have to be logical, have to be technical. Does not. Sometimes without logic, things work out.
yeah, true. Yeah. Okay. And so, as a mental health professional, as well as someone who has gone through the phase of suicide ideation, what would you tell our listeners um, about, viewing suicide and like anything, whatever we have discussed till now? What would be your, advice to the listeners who might have people around them with such suicide ideation, or going through
Hmm.
this phase of loneliness, isolation?
I would target two people. One is people who are going through it, and second, people who notice people going through it.
Hmm.
For the people going through it, I would say, friends, don't be ashamed of what you're going through. It is not your fault.
Yeah.
You are not responsible for what you're going through, but you are definitely responsible for what will happen to you.
Yeah.
So reach out. People are there, friends are there, family are there. If not, you can reach out to professionals. I cannot speak for the other professionals, but I can definitely speak for myself. You can reach out to me. One way Havisha mentioned is my page, which is Kaleidoscopic Expressions. Apart from that, you can reach me in my other organization, which is water.com on Facebook. You can find me out there. The website details, contact details, everything is there. Do reach out to us, because why wait till it is too late?
Yeah.
So that is what I would say to those people who are going through it. And for the people who notice people who are going through it, is give them space, my friends. It is not their fault, and you don't have to take proactive measures. Sometimes just your presence is enough. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to do anything. But when the person knows that you are there,
Yeah.
the power I cannot express in words. Just be there.
Yeah. True. I guess that brings me to something that has been going on for quite some time. That whatever celebrity incident happened, in the past few months, and that has made a lot of people come up with these, quotes and tags, and this thing that I am there for you, and
Hmm.
reach out
Hmm.
and all of that. But do you think just saying that much is enough for someone going through such a difficult time?
Strangely, up to a great extent, yes.
Okay.
Because in the truest sense, the person might not be there. But when a person reads it and feels, okay, I'm not alone,
Hmm.
that plays a huge, huge role in the psyche.
Okay. 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 So, this is like, I feel, one of the way a person copes, uh, that, okay, I have someone to reach out to. I'm not alone in
Yeah.
this, this thing. What other coping mechanisms do you think plays, good role in a person having suicide ideation? What changes or what shifts from that suicide ideation to not having suicide ideation?
Okay. So, most important is obviously the support system. But apart from the support system, what helps also is bringing changes in the lifestyle.
Okay.
Because uh, when we are going through that phase, our life changes. So, it is important for us to make conscious efforts to bring back the positive changes, things that we used to enjoy doing, make an
Yeah.
effort to do it again. For example, a person used to enjoy, let's say,
Yeah.
gardening, and the person does not feel like gardening because of the depressive
Yeah.
state the person is going through. But if that person makes a conscious effort to engage in it, like constantly making conscious efforts to garden,
Yeah.
that releases the various positive hormones like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and all those things, which
Mm.
charges up the body positively.
Yeah.
Because depression and other mental health problems which are associated with the concept of suicide has two elements. One is the psychological element and the other is the biological element, and biological element can definitely be supported through physical exercises, being physically active, eating good food, and so on and so forth. These also do help.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So these are the ways a person can cope and, probably have a shift in their, along, of course, with the social support and reaching out
Yeah.
to a mental health professional. If these changes are made, then there is a way to cope with such difficult times.
Yeah.
Okay. And, when you mention support system, who do you think are the essential members of this support system? And what worked for you? Like you mentioned your friends, of course, but
Hmm.
um, like what kind, like we have these kinds of friends, right? Some are quite emotionally understanding towards us, some
Hmm.
are not. And so what are those traits that are very important to be in this social support system?
See, it depends. There is no one size fits all kind of thing. For me, I am an extremely emotional person. So for me, the other person being a little less emotional balanced it out.
Okay.
On the other hand, if the other person is not so very emotional, an emotional friend might be what the person needs.
Okay.
So it is like that. So in my case, it was primarily friends, but more than friends, I would put family first because family is what usually a person feels most comfortable with.
Hmm.
So family should be the first person to reach out, because no matter what goes wrong, and God forbid things take a turn for the worse,
Hmm.
with friends there is no guarantee. Yes, the best of the friends will stick around, but it's still a question mark. But when it comes to family, they will be there no matter what.
Correct. True. Yes. um, So you mentioned the thoughts running in your mind before,
Hmm. Hmm.
and because you had isolated yourself. So what was continuously going on in your mind at that time, especially the thought of that you are a burden on someone and you don't want to
Hmm.
be that, and all of that. Was there any particular way in which you addressed those thoughts? Like, we have as mental health professionals, we do give out these strategies to,
Hmm.
someone seeking help, that this is how you can address your thoughts and this is how you, put it out of your system. So, was there any
Hmm.
particular way that helped you doing that?
So for me, that was the very first time when I was introduced to the concept of meditation,
Okay.
because I was exploring the ways of how to calm my mind, and that was what was there. And meditation is something which had been kind of promoted in my family quite a number of times, not from the scientific purpose, more from the spiritual and religious purpose. But
Hmm.
I took up the scientific wala approach,
Okay.
and I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. What's the worst that will happen?
Hmm.
And when I started practicing meditation, the first thing that I benefited was clarity. So
Hmm.
I started realizing what my thoughts exactly are, and why those thoughts are. What are the
Hmm.
sources of those thoughts? What is the purpose of those thoughts?
Yeah.
I started reflecting,
Okay.
people usually think meditation is just sitting and chanting and calling out to God and all those things.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily that. Meditation is just simply focusing and going deep down into your psyche and having a journey to your soul.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that helped. And it's not necessary that meditation will help everybody, but definitely it is something which everybody can try out nevertheless.
Okay. All right. I'm sure this is useful for our listeners because it's a very nicely explained concept that how it worked for you, and I hope listeners adapt to that and even suggest, that this is what something that you can do to address these thoughts. Yeah. Uh, all right. We have few questions from the audience, and we
Sure.
can address them now. So one of the questions is that you said you were able to manage, this coming out of this rough patch without therapy, and that's
Hmm.
great because as you mentioned, that you are a mental health professional yourself, and that probably somewhere helped you because studying this field, having knowledge about
Hmm.
things, right? However, if as a friend we see that our friend might have signs of depression and might want to harm themselves, so
Hmm.
apart from offering our support and listening to them, what can we do?
Okay. If there are signs of self harm and self destruction, it is extremely important to notify
Yeah.
somebody else. Like, in a sense, somebody else can be their parents if the person is younger, or if the person is a little mature, then mental health professionals can also be addressed. So we can just call up our counselor and say, okay, my friend is showing this type of symptoms
Okay.
and I need your help. That can also be
Okay.
done.
Okay. All right. And if like, if them going to therapy is one of the most beneficial things that
Hmm.
needs to be done, so how do you think as a friend you can convince them to take up mental health professional help?
See, it is something, especially in Indian society, a very tricky thing because mental
Yeah.
health is still considered a taboo by the maximum majority of the population. Okay,
Yeah.
you are going to a mental health professional, psychologist के पास जा रहा है, psycho है क्या? And
Yeah.
all those
True.
things are there.
Yeah.
But as a friend, what you can do is do the very exact thing, like in the sense that help them realize that there is nothing wrong in going to a mental health professional and this for their own benefit. They can just simply consider it going to a doctor, because I don't think anybody is ashamed of going to a doctor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they can just think it as if they are going to a doctor, and they can go and take it a shot. If not, nothing works, okay, don't repeat, but what's the harm in going?
Yeah. Correct. Correct. All right. Another question is that how do we detect these suicidal ideations in another other individuals?
Okay, so out here it's important as the other to notice certain key signs and symptoms. So one of the signs and symptoms is behavioral change.
Hmm.
So if a person who is extremely friendly, talkative, starts becoming quiet, starts isolating themselves, that is one sign.
Okay.
Another sign, which is a little difficult to notice but still quite evident, that is change in appetite and sleep patterns.
Okay.
Especially if someone lives with the person, will be able to notice these things. Then third is how often they use things, words and phrases related to death.
Okay.
And especially if they pass comments in a very light, humorous manner, if they make fun of the concept of death, these are also signs that, okay, the person is going towards that path.
Okay.
And there are many others which you can talk to me about personally. I don't think
Yeah.
this is the right platform.
Yeah. All right. Um, Another question is that children today tend to threaten parents and family with
Hmm.
committing suicide. So how do we tackle that, and how do we believe that it is, whether, how do we differentiate whether it's a genuine threat or not genuine one?
Hmm. Out here, the primary responsibility, the owners, goes to the parents, to be honest,
Yeah,
because it does not matter if the child is a teenager, a toddler, or an adult. Okay, not in the case of an adult, but definitely if the child is a teenager or a younger person, then the onus comes on the parents, because the parent has to understand what is going on. And because again, till the person becomes an adult, the person looks up to the parents. They see the parent figure as a superior figure.
yeah,
So, and more often than not, the child is trying to get the attention of the parent towards their problem. And every single time, it is not necessary that the child will be able to vocalize what they're going through.
yeah.
So, like I mentioned, if the parent is able to identify behavioral changes,
Okay.
then that is a very high and strong indication that something is wrong. But if the child is like that all the time, then most likely it's more of a behavioral problem than a serious problem like suicide or something.
All right, all right. And if parents do, observe these behavioral changes that do indicate genuine suicide ideation in the
Hmm.
children, uh, what would you tell those parents how to help, the children out? Because now again, as we talked about society's construct of
Hmm.
suicide, and I'm sure, like, children doesn't have a very open view about this construct. They are
Hmm.
still very much, surrounded by these
Yeah.
society's view. So, with given that construct in their minds, how do you think parents can help them?
I think you have given the answer yourself, Avisha, in the sense that the parents have to make the child believe that society will say whatever it says. I am there for you. You
Okay.
can trust me. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
I am not going to judge. I am not going to complain. I am just there for you. You can say whatever you want. That confidence when the child has
Yeah.
upon the parent, there is no way that the child will not open up.
Okay. Yeah. True. Just that giving that comfort zone to them, that okay, you can speak out anything it is, and we are there for you. True. That is very true about it. Okay. And I guess we have a comment in the chat saying that I believe personally holistic healing helps a lot. Uh, what would you like to say about that?
Definitely. Like every aspect of life is holistic. You cannot ignore anything. So, from a therapeutic perspective, one aspect would be like psychological psychotherapy, the clinical aspect. One would be the alternative healings like music, meditation, and so on and so forth. Another aspect would be the support system in the form of friends, family, etc.
Yeah.
Another aspect would be self-care, sleeping well, eating healthy, so on and so forth. Everything becomes the holistic approach. You cannot choose one over the other.
True. True. Yeah. Okay. I guess we have covered a lot of areas about your perspective to suicide and how it has been, the journey has been for you. And this is my question, like when we were talking and conversing and you were
Hmm.
sharing your, survivor story, that something
Hmm.
that comes to my mind is that what gives you the strength right now to talk about it? Um, because again, the society's construct, and of course that's a very difficult patch that you have come out of.
Hmm.
So what's this strength? Where did you get this strength to talk about it right now?
Uh, Initially, the strength was my friends who I realized is going to be there no matter how bad my life gets, no matter how much I make them miserable, because of my own misery, they are going to be there. That was what helped me initially.
Yeah.
But now, what allows me to speak up is the knowledge and confidence that what I went through is something which I am not responsible for, in the sense that it is not my fault. And if it is
Yeah.
not my fault, why should I feel guilty? And if I'm not feeling guilty about it, what's wrong in talking about it? Might help somebody else. Might somebody else realize that, okay, there are ways to take care.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Again, I very much commend that you are here with us on this platform to share your experiences and what all helped you to get through out of this. And as our listeners, and we know that this is the Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and it's about to end, and this is MHT's effort to reach out to listeners. Um, so we thank you that you came up to this platform and shared your story. So
It's
on
my
this
pleasure,
note,
Havisha.
yeah,
And I would just take the liberty out here
yeah,
uh, that one of the major concerns which lead to suicide is that of depression. And
yeah,
this is something which I did mention in this conversation.
yeah,
And if you feel that you are going through depression, or maybe just feeling sad and not able to handle the sadness in your life, or maybe not yourself, you are noticing people and you want to help others who are suffering from sadness and depression, or
yeah,
maybe you have overcome depression and want to spread the knowledge that how to overcome and so on and so forth, we at water.com, that's WHATERR, so it's water with an edge and an extra R. So you can find us on Facebook. Like I mentioned, we are holding a support circle today, 6 to 7 p.m. So you can check out the event, and if you feel connected to this cause, I would definitely request you humbly to be a part of the circle.
yeah. Yeah, and I would again like our address our audience saying that please reach out to Mr. Amresh through water.com or through Kaleidoscopic Expressions on Instagram. He's there, for you to answer your personal queries, if at all any, out of after listening to him talking about his experiences. So, on an ending note, Amresh, what would you like to tell our listeners about, like as I mentioned, this is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and these are our efforts to reach out in different ways, as you are conducting this support circle and we are conducting this webinar, like that. So, like an ending message to our listeners, what is it that you would like to tell them?
I think most of it I have already spoken a lot. So I would just end with a single phrase, which is very close to my heart. That's,
Hmm.
it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you, listeners. Thank you, Mr. Amresh, for tuning in with us. And uh, you know, uh, I'm very happy today that I got to know this enriching experience of yours. And as you mentioned that uh, if it is out there and if it helps someone, it's worth it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So reach out for any further questions on MHT. Reach out for any other, for any further help you require from Mr. Amresh. The details are mentioned in the description. And yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Amresh, again.
Thank you
Would
so
just
much
like
for the
to,
opportunity, Havisha.
yeah, thank. We are very happy to have you on our, MHT page. So yes, to our listeners, MHT India has launched an exciting new range of merchandise that aims at building awareness and acceptance in the community, and as well as promote well-being. If you, like us, give your mental health a priority, do check out the merchandise. The link of it is given in the description. It's some amazing, products, some amazing merchandise. Please just go check out. And for our loyal viewers who have tuned in today, there is a special coupon code for you. It's MHT No number 2 suicide, which is valid only for today. That's 27th of September till midnight. And if you use this coupon code, you will avail 5% on top of the MRP. So please go check that out and check out Kaleidoscopic Expressions on Instagram, water.com on YouTube, and reach out to us whenever required. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is us signing off.